Hello everyone, welcome to another session of Analytics About. And here we are going to discuss table calculations and in specific three table calculations, first, index, and last, that can be pretty powerful in order to compute values within your worksheet that contains a table. So I have created a mini table for demonstration purposes. It has got 5 entries, 1 to 5, and for the dates from 18 September to 14 September, and these are the corresponding sales in USD million dollars. So a layman definition of an index is basically the entry of the data within the data set in a table. And as you can see, the 18 September is the first entry and it is actually 350. And the last entry is 14 September and 2021, and it is the fifth entry in the data set, and it sales as $330 million. Note that we have not performed any sorting of any sort in this table, and it is just a raw entry of the data within the data point corresponding to when the data were first occurred. Uh, and this is the basic uh, structure of a table that you create. Now let's see how Tableau defines the functions first, index, and last. Now, according to Tableau, index basically means it returns the index of the current row in the partition without any sorting, with regard to the values. The first row index starts at 1. So, what this means is that exactly what we have just discussed, that the first entry is defined as 1, and at the same time these index values do not care for any sort of sorting. We have not sorted data at any point in our table, and that's why these indexes are with regard to just the entry of the data within the data set without any sort of sorting. Now let's see what does the first defined by Tableau. And the first function is defined as returns the number of rows from the current row to the first row in the partition. So it basically returns the number of rows from the current row to the first row in the partition. What this means is that it basically represents the number of steps you need to take to go to the first row, and our first row is this. So how many steps we need to take in order to get to the first row in the table. So if we are at position 2, uh, so if we are at position 1, firstly, we need to take 0 steps. If we are at position 2, we need to take like backwards -1 step in order to reach the first position. If we are at position 3, we need to take minus 1 and -2 steps in order to reach the first position in the table. So for the first is like -2. If we are at position 4, we have to similarly take -3 steps. And if we are at position 5, we have to take -4 steps in order to actually reach the first position. Uh, so this is what your first function returns in Tableau. And finally, let's see what the last function returns in Tableau. Returns the number of rows from the current row to the last row in the partition. From the current row to the last row in the partition. So as you can see that the last entry point in our data set is this one. And if we are at position 5, we have to take basically 0 steps in order to come to the last position. But if we are at position number 4, we have to take like +1 step. We have to go forward by 1 step in order to kind of reach the last position, which is 5. Uh, you can also think about it as adding the number of index points in order to reach number 5, which is last. So, and similarly, if we are at position 3, we need to add another 2 steps. If we are at position 2, we have to add another 3 steps. And if we are at position 1, we need to add another 4 steps in order to actually reach the last position. So we have plus 4, plus 3, plus 2, and plus 1. And this is what your last function returns. And this is what your index function returns. And now let's kind of visualize the same thing in Tableau.
Implement the same function that we discussed in Tableau. We are going to create 3 calculated fields. The first would be the index function. Tableau has defined that here for us. Hit OK. The another calculated field for the first, and this is basically just the first function. Again, Tableau defines the same definition that we discussed. Hit OK. And finally, let's create the calculated field for last. And this is just simply the last function. And again, Tableau has defined that for us. And it's a default Tableau calculation. What we are going to then do is drag on order date to our rows shelf. And let's say we want to visualize the sales. So Tableau is automatically picking up the sum of the sales on a yearly basis. And let's see what the index of this is. So as we can anticipate, this should be 1, this should be 2, this should be 3, and this should be 4. And let's kind of drag on index and let's see what it is. And as we have expected, we can see the index is actually 1, 2, 3, and 4. Note that it doesn't care for whether the data has been sorted or not. It simply indicates the entry of the data points within the table. The first will return the number of steps that we need to take in order to kind of reach the first index within the table. So if we have to anticipate what our first function is going to return, so this should actually 2018 should the number of steps that you need to take to go to the first index is actually 0. So this should be 0. But from the 2 position to go to the index 1 position, you take backward -1 step. 2 minus 1 is 1. So it is basically, it should be -1. 3 minus 2 is 1. So you have to take backwards 2 steps. And therefore 2020 value for first should be -2. And finally for 2021 it should be -3. And let's just drag it on to our values, and as you can see, this is exactly what we expected. And finally, let's just drag in last, and as we know, last is the number of steps that you need to take in order to reach the last entry within the data set. And over here it is position 4. So if you have to come from position 3 to in order to position 4, we have to take +1 step in order to get to the last position. From 2 to 4 is 2 plus 2 is 4, so we need to take +2 steps. 1 plus 3 is 4, so we need to take +3 steps. So we just see that, and as you can see, this is a 3, 2, 1, and 0, as we just discussed. So this is the first index and last function, and we are going to implement these functions in our window average calculations and other table calculations in the next tutorials. So thank you so much, and do like, share, and subscribe if you found this video really helpful. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.